Hey, it's Bobby. I wanted to follow up on the video that I did yesterday about the two methods of memorization that I recommend for memorizing large chunks of scripture. And the two techniques can actually be applied to any sort of text information. The one that would be better for complicated information would be the visual imagery technique, because there's actually figurative codes that you can use for numbers and for concepts and ideas that you can just like for memorizing tables and things of that sort is really easy with the visual imagery technique. But with the repetition technique, it would take you forever to do that sort of like technical information. But the the two types, like I said, are the repetition technique and the visual imagery technique. There's pros and cons to each one. When used together, it's really helpful. But I'll explain why there's benefits and setbacks to each one. With the first one, the benefits are, and this is the repetition method, the benefits are that you develop a reflex connection over time, and your lips will get used to the sequence of movements and it'll just spit the words right out. An example, when I first started memorizing the Psalms, I did it all by repetition because I didn't know the visual imagery method yet. And, with the earlier Psalms, I repeated them more than the later ones because, I just, when I went through each time, like every time I learn a new psalm, I always started over with Psalm 1. And so Psalm 1, I just got this reflex connection. I can spit it right out. Like Psalm 1, blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. And in his law he meditates day and night. He shall be like a river planted by, he shall be like a tree planted by the rivers of water that brings forth his fruit in its season, whose leaf also shall not wither. Whatever he does shall prosper. The ungodly are not so, but are like the chaff which the wind drives away. Therefore the ungodly shall not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the ungodly shall perish. And for about the first few psalms, it's like that. I can just spit it right out. But in the later psalms, I start to have trouble remembering what's the next line, and so I started using the visual imagery method when I learned it. And one thing I noticed about that is it's really helpful for remembering what line comes next because you have an image for each line. But what's hard to get down with the visual imagery technique is the exact wording because it's not meant, the technique wasn't come up with to remember word for word information, but it was designed to allow for quick and efficient memorization of large volumes of information. And so it's sort of like a sampling technique. And when I say sampling, I mean like in the communications electronics world, what you would do is to transform a signal from analog to digital, you would have to sample the signal at set intervals, and it would change it from a continuous signal to a discrete signal. And that means that whatever's in between those samples, the brain has to fill in on its own, kind of like a film where it shoots like 20 something frames per second and the eye fills in the rest. That's how the visual imagery technique works. And what's really helpful when you're using that technique is if you first, before you start using the visual images, if you listen to the chapter and get down the word for word sequence for like a couple of lines at a time, not linking them all together into the whole chapter because that's kind of tiring, but do it a couple of lines at a time and get the feel for the way each sentence flows out of your mouth develop a little bit of a reflex connection, and then start using the visual images. Um, and that way you won't have to come up with as many images. You'll be able to use to economize on the images and have one image represent like two sentences. Um, Sometimes if I've repeated the lines enough, I can have one image represent a whole section of a song, which would be like a paragraph worth of information just on one image, because sometimes the sequence of words, if you repeat it enough times, your lips just get used to the sequence of movements for spitting out that uh, those that line or two or whatever. Um, and so what I recommend is a combination of the two methods.